You ever notice how when someone hurts you, betrays you, or tries to tear you down, the first thing inside of you wants to do is call them out, expose them, let everybody know who they really are? That's the natural reaction because it feels like justice. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, the more you try to call them out, the more power you actually give them. They thrive off the attention, they feed off the drama, and they'll twist the story until you're the one who looks like the problem. What you don't see in that moment is that God has already seen every tear, every sleepless night, every false word spoken against you. He doesn't need you to fight that battle in your own strength, because he has a plan that's bigger than their manipulation, greater than their lies, and far more powerful than any trap they try to set for you. When somebody wounds you so deeply, when you've given them your trust, your love, your energy, and all they've done is betray you, the natural instinct is to rise up and point the finger. It's almost like something inside of you screams, "People need to know what this person did to me. People need to know the truth." That drive for justice is real, and it's strong. It comes from the human desire to balance the scales, to make sure the wrong doesn't go unnoticed. But what often happens, especially when you're dealing with someone who has that manipulative, narcissistic spirit, is that the moment you call them out, the moment you try to expose them, you actually step into the game they've been setting up all along. They want you to lose your peace. They want you to look angry. They want you to look bitter, because then they can twist the story and turn themselves into the victim. And suddenly the truth of what they did to you gets buried under the false image they've created. You know what makes it even harder? It's the fact that they are often so skilled at putting on that mask, at charming others, at presenting themselves as kind, generous, and even spiritual. You know what they've done behind closed doors. You know the manipulation, the gaslighting, the lies. But when you look around, everyone else seems to be applauding them, following them, even admiring them. That can be one of the most painful parts, because it feels like the world is blind to who they truly are. That's when the urge to call them out becomes almost unbearable, because you feel like you're the only one who can lift the veil and show the truth. But the danger is that in trying to expose them, you get pulled into their game, and the more you fight them in the open, the more it drains you, the more it confuses others, and the more it distracts you from your real purpose. See, when you react from a place of hurt and try to expose someone with your own words, you step into a battle that was never meant to be fought in your strength. That's exactly what a narcissist wants. They want to pull you down into the mud where the lines between truth and lies get blurred. They want you to waste your energy proving yourself, explaining yourself, defending yourself. And the more you do it, the more you find yourself exhausted, frustrated, and empty, while they're still standing there acting like the hero of the story. That's why calling them out often doesn't bring the justice you're looking for. But here's what's powerful to understand. Just because you don't call them out doesn't mean justice isn't coming. God sees what no one else sees. He hears the conversations that never make it into the light. He knows the manipulation, the cruelty, the dishonesty that others don't pick up on, and the Word reminds us that God is not mocked. You might not always see immediate results. You might not always see instant consequences, but there is nothing hidden from him. What people get away with for a season, they cannot escape forever. That's why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back and let God fight the battle you can't win in your flesh. There's something freeing about realizing that you don't have to spend your life proving who someone else really is. You don't have to spend your energy trying to make people see what you already know. Because when God's timing is right, the truth will come out in a way that nobody can deny. And when it does, it won't be because you manipulated it. It won't be because you forced it. It will be because God Himself lifted the curtain and showed the reality. That kind of exposure is undeniable. It doesn't backfire, and it brings a peace to you that no human argument could ever bring. Think about it. Every time you let go of the urge to call them out, every time you resist the temptation to fight them with your words, you're actually protecting your own peace, your own energy, your own destiny. Because while they're playing their games, you're staying focused on your purpose. While they're weaving lies, you're walking in truth. While they're trying to pull you down, you're allowing God to lift you higher. And that shift in perspective is where your real power is. It's not in exposing them, it's in choosing not to let them control your reactions, not to let them dictate your focus. It's not weakness to stay silent when everything in you wants to shout. It's not weakness to let God handle what you cannot. In fact, it takes far more strength to hold your peace than to explode in anger. It takes far more courage to trust God's plan than to demand your own form of justice right now. But when you learn to do that, when you learn to hold back from calling them out and instead hand it over to God, you'll find yourself walking in a level of peace and strength you didn't even know you had. Because the truth is, your healing, your growth, your destiny is not dependent on whether everyone sees who they really are. Your healing comes from knowing who you are, knowing who your God is, and trusting that He will always bring justice in His perfect way and His perfect time. When you've been wronged, mistreated, or lied about, the most human reaction is to stand up and defend yourself. You want people to see the truth, you want the mask of the other person to come off, and you want to feel like balance has been restored. That's what justice feels like to us. It's the restoration of truth, the exposure of lies, the clearing of our name. But when you step into the world of a narcissist, the rules don't apply the way you think they do. In fact, the very thing that feels like justice to you, calling them out, pointing out their lies, showing the world their true colors, becomes fuel for them. Instead of weakening them, it strengthens them. Instead of silencing them, it gives them a louder platform. The reason this happens is because narcissists thrive on attention, whether it's positive or negative. They don't really care if people are praising them or arguing with them, so long as the spotlight stays on them. When you call them out, when you go toe-to-toe with them, you're feeding them exactly what they want: energy, focus, drama. To them, being at the center of conflict is not a problem, it's a victory. They know how to manipulate the narrative so that even when you think you're exposing them, they're turning it into evidence that you're the problem. They'll paint you as bitter, unstable, unforgiving, or overly emotional. And because they're often skilled at controlling perceptions, people buy into their story. This is why so many people who try to confront a narcissist walk away more frustrated than before. Instead of bringing clarity, it brings confusion. Instead of exposing lies, it creates more lies. Instead of justice, it creates more pain. And the truth is, the more you fight them on their battlefield, the more you exhaust yourself while they walk away stronger. They're not playing to resolve conflict. They're playing to win control, and every time you step into their game, you hand them another piece of that control. It's like trying to fight quicks, and the more you struggle, the deeper you sink. The narcissist knows this. They set traps with their words, they bait you with their behavior, and they wait for the moment you explode. And once you do, they step back, wipe their hands clean, and act like they're the calm, rational one, while you're the angry, unstable one. That's why calling them out so often backfires. It doesn't matter how right you are, they will twist the story until you're the villain and they're the victim. What makes this so difficult is that everything in you feels like you're betraying yourself if you stay quiet. Silence feels like weakness. It feels like letting them win. But what you don't see in the moment is that silence can actually be your greatest strength, because silence denies them the fuel they're looking for. It denies them the chance to twist your words. It denies them the ability to play the victim. When you don't call them out, you're not letting them win. You're refusing to play their game at all. And when you refuse to play their game, they eventually lose, because their power only exists when someone is willing to give it attention. Think about it. A narcissist without an audience loses influence. A narcissist without a reaction loses control. Their entire strategy is built on manipulation, and manipulation only works when someone takes the bait. When you step back, when you choose not to call them out, you're not surrendering, you're starving their power. You're creating a space where they can no longer feed off your energy, and in that space, their control begins to crumble. This doesn't mean you pretend what happened didn't hurt. It doesn't mean you minimize the pain or ignore the injustice. It simply means you understand the battlefield you're on and refuse to fight the wrong way. Justice in the kingdom of God doesn't always come through confrontation. Sometimes it comes through restraint. Sometimes the most powerful weapon you have is your refusal to be pulled into their cycle of lies and manipulation. There's a wisdom in realizing that your words are too valuable to waste on someone who has no intention of hearing them. Your energy is too precious to spend on someone who only wants to drain it. And your peace is too important to sacrifice on the altar of proving a point. That's why God often leads us to stay still, to stay silent, to stay focused on Him instead of chasing after human justice. Because He knows that every word you don't speak, every battle you don't fight, every argument you walk away from is a way of protecting your destiny. And here's the reality. You don't need to prove who they are, because time will. You don't need to expose their lies, because lies always collapse under the weight of truth. You don't need to clear your name in front of people, because God Himself will clear it when the time is right. The more you release the need to call them out, the freer you become. You stop being tied to their behavior, and you start living from a place of strength and peace. So yes, calling them out might feel like justice in the moment. It might feel like taking back control. But when you understand how a narcissist operates, you realize it's actually giving them exactly what they wanted all along. True justice doesn't come from feeding their ego. It comes from stepping out of the game they're trying to trap you in and trusting that God's plan for justice will always be greater than anything you could achieve on your own.